Get out. Now. My grandmother's voice was the kind of cold you feel deep in your bones, the kind that freezes the air in your lungs. The words stung worse than anything I'd ever felt in my life. I stared at her, trying to process what was happening, but she wasn't looking at me. She wasn't looking at anyone. She was staring out the window, the same window she'd looked out of every day for as long as I could remember. Her frail hands gripped the armrests of her chair as if she could hold the world together with just her fingers. You heard me, Ellie. Get out. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was dreaming, that this couldn't possibly be real. I had just walked into her house after weeks of silence, after she'd been in and out of the hospital. And now this. What are you talking about, Grandma? What's going on? I stammered, my voice shaking. Why are you saying this? She didn't answer. The silence hung between us, thick with a tension I couldn't cut through. My mother, who had been standing by the door, was glaring at me like I'd just committed some unforgivable sin. Her arms were crossed tightly, her face twisted into a mask of disgust. And my older brother Matt, always the favorite, stood beside her, eyes narrowed in a way that made me feel like I was the enemy. Mom, I turned to her, desperate for an explanation. But she didn't respond. Her lips barely moved as she muttered under her breath, something I couldn't hear. I didn't need to. The look in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She wanted me gone, just like Matt did. Ellie, Grandma finally said, her voice soft but final, this house, it's not yours anymore. It never was. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My heart stopped for a second, and my mind raced to catch up. What the hell was she talking about? This house had always been mine. I'd spent countless summers here, had my first heartbreak here, and even though things with my family had been strained, this house was always my sanctuary, my safe place. And now Grandma was telling me it wasn't mine? What did that even mean? I opened my mouth to protest, but Matt cut me off before I could get a word out. You heard her, Ellie. It's over. We've been trying to tell you for years, but you just never listened. Matt, stop, I said, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. What's going on? Why is she saying this? But Matt just smirked. Don't act surprised. You think Mom and Grandma have been treating you like this for no reason? You've always been the problem. You never fit in with us, Ellie. We're tired of pretending you do. I felt my chest tighten. I could feel the heat rising to my face, the rush of blood that came with humiliation and disbelief. Was he really saying this? Was this the truth? All my life, I had been the odd one out, the person who never seemed to belong. But to hear it from him, my older brother, the one who was supposed to protect me, it felt like a betrayal so deep I could taste it. I turned back to Grandma, my voice breaking. Grandma, please. What's happening? Why are they doing this? But her eyes were dull now, her hands trembling as she slowly looked up at me. It's time, Ellie. You have to go. I didn't know what to do. I felt like I was suffocating. I stood there in shock, staring at my family, the people who were supposed to love me, who were supposed to support me. They all just stood there, silent, waiting for me to leave, waiting for me to disappear. Ellie, my mom said, her voice dripping with venom, you've always been the mistake, haven't you? We've tried to keep it together, tried to make you feel like part of this family, but you never understood. You never could. I recoiled, the words cutting deeper than I thought possible. For as long as I could remember, my mom had always made it clear that I was a disappointment to her, but to hear it said so openly, so brutally, it felt like my world was collapsing. My knees buckled, and I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. Matt stepped forward, his eyes cold, filled with something I couldn't even begin to name. You should have known this was coming, Ellie. Everyone has a breaking point, and you've reached yours. I shook my head, desperately trying to hold onto some shred of reality. This doesn't make sense. Why now? Why after all these years? My grandmother didn't respond. She didn't move. She just sat there, like she had already given up on me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but the words stuck in my throat. I turned to leave, tears welling up in my eyes, but just as I reached the door, my mother's voice rang out one last time. This was always going to happen. You never belonged here, Ellie. You never will. And with that, I stepped out of the house that was supposed to be mine, but now it felt like a foreign place. I had no idea what I was supposed to do next, no idea where to go. All I knew was that I had been cast out by the very people who were supposed to love me. And for the first time in my life, I was truly alone. I don't know how long I stood outside the house, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My hands were shaking, and my mind was racing, spinning out of control as I stared at the front door, the only place I'd ever called home. The driveway stretched in front of me like a long, empty road, leading nowhere. I didn't know where to go, what to do, or how to even start picking up the pieces of this wrecked life I'd been handed. I'd always known my family was messed up, but I never thought they'd actually go this far. I never imagined they'd kick me out like that, especially not when my grandmother had been the one constant in my life. I turned away from the house, the smell of the old wood and the flowers in the garden almost suffocating me with their familiarity. I had to leave. I had to get out. I didn't know where I was going, but I needed space, distance from all of them, from everything that felt like it was closing in on me. I didn't even know where I was walking. I just kept moving, my feet carrying me down the street without any real purpose. I didn't know if I was looking for someone to help me, or if I was just running away from the reality I couldn't escape. Every step felt heavier, the weight of my family's rejection pressing down on me, crushing my chest with every breath I took. Eventually, I found myself sitting on a park bench, staring at the ground, trying to gather some sense of direction. My phone was buzzing in my pocket, but I didn't bother looking at it. I knew it was probably my mom or Matt, but I didn't care. The last thing I needed was more of their cruelty. I couldn't understand why they were doing this. Why now? Why hadn't they told me sooner that they wanted me out of their lives? What had changed? Ellie? The voice made me jump, and I looked up to see Karen, an old friend from high school, standing in front of me. She was a year older than me, but we'd been close back in the day. I hadn't seen her in months, not since I'd cut ties with most of my old friends when my family had pushed me away. Karen, what are you doing here? I asked, my voice weak. I could ask you the same thing, she replied, sitting down next to me without waiting for an invitation. What happened? You look like you've been hit by a truck. I tried to smile, but it came out as a grimace. It's nothing. Just family stuff. You know how it is.
She didn't buy it.
Karen always had this way of seeing through my bullshit, even when I tried to hide behind a mask of normalcy. She leaned forward, concern flashing in her eyes. Come on, Ellie. You're not fooling anyone. What happened? I exhaled sharply, not knowing where to start. For a second, I thought about telling her everything about what had just gone down, but the words felt like they were stuck in my throat. I wasn't sure I even understood it myself yet. They kicked me out, I said finally, the words sounding hollow even to me. She frowned, her brows furrowing. What do you mean? Your family kicked you out? But why? I shook my head, my hands starting to tremble again. I don't know.
I don't understand.
My grandmother, she told me I didn't belong there, that the house wasn't mine anymore. She said it was time for me to go. Karen's face softened with sympathy. Ellie, that doesn't make sense. I mean, it's your home.
What is she talking about?
Why would she say that? I don't know, I whispered, feeling like I was losing my grip on everything. I thought maybe it was just her being, I don't know, old? But then my mom and Matt, they've always been hard on me, but now they're just so cruel. Like they've been waiting for this moment. Karen didn't say anything for a long time. She just sat there, watching me with that expression that made me feel like I was being weighed, measured, and found wanting. I wanted to scream at her to stop looking at me like that, but I didn't. Instead, I just let her be silent, letting the weight of everything press down on me even harder. Finally, she spoke. Ellie, you need to figure out what's going on. If they've been treating you like this all these years, there has to be a reason. It's not just random. I know, I muttered. But I don't have any answers. I don't know what to do. Well, you can't just let them do this to you. You have to stand up for yourself, Ellie. Whatever this is, it's not about you, but it's happening to you. You need to find out what's really going on. I nodded absently. She was right, but I wasn't sure where to start. It wasn't like I could just march back into the house and demand answers from my family. They'd already shown me how little they cared. They'd already made it clear that I wasn't welcome. So what was I supposed to do? Where was I supposed to go from here? As if on cue, my phone buzzed in my pocket again, this time louder and more persistent. I pulled it out, seeing my mom's name flashing across the screen. My heart dropped. I didn't want to talk to her. I didn't want to hear her voice telling me how much of a disappointment I was, how much of a mistake I had been all these years.
But then something inside me snapped.
I couldn't keep running away. I couldn't let them have all the power.
If they wanted me to be gone, fine.
But I wasn't going to leave without a fight. Not this time. Answer it, Karen said, her voice quiet but firm. I stared at the phone for a few seconds before swiping to answer it. The call went through, and I could hear my mom's voice immediately, sharp and demanding. Ellie, where the hell are you? You need to come home. We need to talk. I took a deep breath, my pulse quickening.
No.
I'm not coming back until you explain what's going on. Why did you and Matt kick me out? What's this about the house? Why did Grandma say it's not mine anymore? There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a second I thought she might hang up. But then, in a voice that was colder than I had ever heard it, she finally spoke. You think you're entitled to something, Ellie? You're not. You never were. And with that, she hung up. I stared at the phone, the weight of her words sinking in. It wasn't over. It had just begun. I spent the rest of the night on that park bench, trying to make sense of everything. Karen had left after a while, promising to check in on me later, but I didn't expect much. I didn't expect anyone to care about what had just happened, not really. I knew deep down that it wasn't just about the house or the money. Something bigger was going on, something deeper that I couldn't see yet, and I was getting desperate to figure it out. I couldn't keep wandering around like this, my life hanging in the balance with no answers. I didn't sleep that night. My mind kept running through every moment, every word exchanged between my family and me. My mom's coldness, Matt's smugness, Grandma's strange final words, none of it made sense. And the more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Why had Grandma given me the house, then immediately turned on me? Why had she kept this secret from me? And most importantly, what did my mom mean when she said I wasn't entitled to anything? I'd always known I wasn't the favorite, but this was something else. Around noon the next day, I decided to take a trip to the old library. It had been a place I'd gone to a lot as a kid when I needed to escape, when I needed to be alone. It felt like the one place I could go to think clearly, without the constant noise of my family's drama ringing in my ears. The walk to the library was long, but I didn't mind. My mind was too occupied with my own thoughts to care about anything else. When I got there, I headed straight to the back of the building where the old archives were kept. Most people didn't bother with the dusty, forgotten corners of the library anymore, but I knew there were things buried in those old books and files that might give me the answers I needed. As I was sifting through the stacks of papers and old real estate documents, I noticed something strange. A folder, wedged between two thick volumes of history books, caught my eye. It wasn't labeled, and it didn't look like it belonged to any of the regular files. I pulled it out, dusted it off, and opened it. Inside were a series of legal documents, all relating to property transfers, land ownership, and a family trust. At first, I thought it was just another boring set of papers that didn't mean anything. But then I found it, one document that stopped me cold. The name on the top was mine. It was an official deed to the house, signed by my grandmother. But there was something strange about it. The date on the deed was recent, far too recent to be the original one. It didn't make sense. I knew for a fact that the house had been passed down in my family for generations. It had always been Grandma's, and it had always been in her name. But this deed, it looked like a new transfer, like someone had made a change without telling me. My heart pounded in my chest as I scanned the document, trying to make sense of it. And then I saw it, a clause in the corner of the paper that made my blood run cold. The deed wasn't just for the house. It was for the entire property, including the land, the house, and everything else attached to it. But the most shocking part? The clause stated that the property would revert to my mother's name if I ever lost ownership, if I ever failed to meet a certain condition. And the condition? I had to remain in the good graces of my family. I had to remain integrated into the family structure. I felt my stomach twist. My mom had been right. The house wasn't mine anymore. Grandma hadn't just given it to me. She had been trying to give me a chance to keep it. But it was a game I didn't even know I was playing, and now, because I wasn't accepted by my family, the house had shifted out of my hands. I didn't know what to do with this information. Should I confront Grandma's lawyer? Should I go after my mother? I wanted answers, but I was starting to understand just how tangled up everything was. It wasn't just about being kicked out of the house. It was about control, manipulation, and something much darker lying beneath the surface of everything I'd ever known. I spent the next few hours combing through more of the documents, trying to find anything else that could explain why Grandma had made these decisions. I couldn't stop thinking about her. Why had she kept this secret from me? Why had she let this happen? I didn't know what she had been trying to protect me from, but it was clear now that this wasn't just about a family dispute. There was something much bigger at play, and I had no idea how deep it went. I didn't realize how much time had passed until the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the library floor. My head ached from reading too much, my mind spinning with all the new information. But then, as I stood up to leave, I saw him. Daniel. He was sitting at a table near the back of the room, flipping through a stack of papers, his glasses perched on the end of his nose. Daniel was an old friend of mine. We hadn't talked much since high school, but we'd always gotten along. He was the quiet type, but there was always something about him that made me feel like he knew more than he let on. He looked up as I walked past, his eyes catching mine. "Ellie," he said, his voice soft but warm. "I didn't expect to see you here. You all right?" I paused, surprised to see him.
Yeah.
"Just trying to figure some stuff out." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "You look like you've seen a ghost. What's going on?" I didn't know why, but I felt like I could tell him. Maybe it was because I didn't have anyone else. Or maybe it was because something about his quiet demeanor made me think he'd understand. "It's my family," I said, sitting down next to him. "I don't know what's going on. My grandmother died, and now I'm being kicked out of the house, only it's not really my house anymore. There's something going on with ownership, and I don't know who to trust or where to turn." Daniel leaned back in his chair, his eyes scanning mine as if he was trying to read between the lines. After a long pause, he spoke again, his voice low and steady. "Ellie, I don't know what's going on, but I might be able to help. There's something about your family. I've heard things. Not directly from them, but from people who know them. You're not the first person to get caught in their web." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I wasn't sure what he meant, but I knew one thing. I wasn't in this alone anymore. I left the library feeling more confused than when I walked in. Daniel's words, his cryptic hints about my family, echoed in my mind. He didn't say much, but there was something in the way he looked at me, something that made me realize I was far deeper into this mess than I'd ever thought. There were secrets buried in my family, secrets that no one wanted me to uncover. I knew it now. I had been right to suspect that my grandmother's death wasn't the end of everything. It was just the beginning. I couldn't go back to the house, not now. It wasn't mine anymore, not the way I thought it was. But what if I was wrong? What if there was something I could do? The drive back to the house was longer than usual, like every minute spent in the car was dragging me further into the chaos that was my life. I could feel my chest tightening the closer I got to the place that used to be my sanctuary, and I hated how much control it still had over me. I didn't want to go back, but I knew I had to. There was too much I didn't know, and I couldn't just sit around letting everything fall apart. I needed answers, and if that meant confronting my family, then that's what I would do. It was the only choice I had left. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked like it always had. Same old brick facade, same creeping vines on the side, the faint smell of smoke from the old fireplace that my grandmother used to light every evening. But today, the house felt cold, as though it was closing in on me. I stood there for a moment, trying to gather the courage to go inside, but it was hard to shake the feeling that I was walking into something I wasn't ready for. I walked up to the front door, hesitated for a second, and then knocked. I didn't know who I expected to answer, but it wasn't my mother. She opened the door with a look that could have frozen water, her eyes sharp as knives, and I could tell she was already angry. "Why are you here?" she demanded, crossing her arms tightly over her chest. "I need to talk to you," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I need to know why you kicked me out. What's really going on? What did Grandma do with the house?" Her expression faltered for just a second, but it was enough to make my heart race. "You don't get it, Ellie. You never did. This isn't just about the house. It's about you." "About me?" I repeated, confused. "What are you talking about?" I thought Grandma wanted me to have it. She gave it to me. It was mine." She let out a bitter laugh, a sound that sent a chill down my spine. "It was never yours. You just thought it was because she let you think that. But that's not the way it works. You've always been the problem, Ellie." I blinked, trying to process what she was saying. "What do you mean I'm the problem? I've never done anything wrong." "Oh, really?" Her voice rose now, her anger boiling over. "You think you've never done anything wrong? You think you're perfect? You've never been good enough for this family, Ellie. You never fit in. And now that Grandma's gone, we don't have to keep pretending." Her words hit me like a slap to the face, and for a moment, I just stood there, stunned. "You never fit in." Those words were like a weight on my chest, suffocating me. Everything I'd believed, everything I'd thought I knew about my family, was a lie. I had spent years trying to make sense of the mess, trying to fit into a family that had always kept me at arm's length. And now, it was all unraveling before my eyes. Is that what this is about? All these years, I've been trying to be a part of this family, and you've just been waiting for me to fail?" I asked, my voice cracking. My mom didn't flinch.
Exactly.
"You were never part of the plan, Ellie. You were just the mistake we had to pretend to love, because Grandma wanted us to. But now, she's gone, and we don't have to do that anymore. You're nothing but a burden." The words felt like a knife slicing through me, but I couldn't let her see how much they were hurting me. "And the house?" I asked again, my voice low but insistent. "What about the house? Why did Grandma leave it to me if she didn't want me there?" She shifted uncomfortably, her eyes avoiding mine for a brief moment. "Grandma left you the house because she thought it was the right thing to do. But she didn't know what you'd become. You were supposed to be the one to take care of things, Ellie. But you never did. You never listened to anyone. You were always too busy being different, and now we're stuck with you." I could feel the anger building up inside me, but I knew if I let it out, it wouldn't do any good. "This is insane," I muttered, shaking my head. "You're blaming me for everything. You're blaming me for existing, for trying to make something of myself, for not being like you and Matt. But you know what? I don't need you. I don't need any of you." I turned to walk away, but she grabbed my arm, her grip tight enough to hurt. "You think you can just walk away from this? You're not going anywhere. This is your family. You'll never escape us. You'll always come back, because you have nowhere else to go." I wrenched my arm free from her grip, glaring at her. "Watch me." I turned and left, my heart pounding in my chest, but I knew now what I had to do. I had to take control. I wasn't going to let them decide my life for me anymore. Whatever secrets they were hiding, whatever twisted games they were playing, I was going to find out the truth. It wasn't over. It wasn't by a long shot. The night felt heavier than usual as I walked away from the house, my mind still reeling from the conversation with my mother. The words she had said echoed in my head, each one a cruel reminder of everything I had done wrong in her eyes, of everything I had failed to be. It felt like an endless loop, a record stuck on repeat, and no matter how hard I tried to shake it off, the weight of her anger and resentment seemed to cling to me like a second skin. As I walked down the street, I could feel my heart racing, a mix of exhaustion and determination coursing through me. I had to do something. I couldn't just let this go, not now. I didn't know what my next move was yet. I had no clear plan, no idea how to break through this twisted web of lies and manipulation. But something inside me had shifted. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't pretend to be the daughter my mother wanted, the sister Matt expected, the person everyone else thought I should be. I had to be myself, even if that meant burning every bridge in the process. But I wasn't going to burn it down alone. I wasn't going to be the only one left standing in the ashes. I called Karen that night, unable to sleep, unable to let go of the nagging feeling in my gut that something wasn't right. She picked up on the first ring, her voice groggy from sleep, but still steady. "Ellie? What's going on? Are you okay?" I took a deep breath, not sure how to explain the storm that was raging inside me. "Karen, I need help," I said, my voice a little shakier than I wanted it to be. "I need to know more about my family, about the house, about Grandma. There's something going on, and I can't figure it out alone." She was quiet for a moment, then spoke again, her tone more serious now. "What's happened? You sound like you're in trouble." "I don't know exactly what's going on, but it's like everyone's been hiding something from me, something about the house, about Grandma's will. My mom's acting like she's always known that I was the problem, that I never fit in. She said that Grandma left the house to me because she thought I was going to take care of things, but I don't even know what that means. It doesn't make sense." Karen let out a sigh, her voice softening. "Ellie, your family, they've always been a little strange. But you need to be careful. They're not the kind of people who let go of things easily, and they don't like it when someone starts asking questions." "I know," I whispered, feeling the weight of the words sink in. "But I can't just let it go. I have to find out the truth." "I get it. Just be careful. I'll help you, but you have to promise me you won't do anything reckless." "I promise," I said, the word feeling like a weight on my chest. "But I don't know what else to do. I'm stuck." "Let's start with the lawyer," Karen said after a pause. "If Grandma made any legal moves, there has to be a record of it. Maybe we can find something that can tell us what she was really planning." That suggestion gave me a sliver of hope, something to latch onto in the darkness. Maybe it wasn't over yet. Maybe I still had a chance to get control of my life back. The next day, I headed to the lawyer's office that had handled Grandma's estate. It was a small, quiet place, tucked away on the corner of a busy street, the kind of office no one would notice unless they were looking for it. I had never been here before, but it felt oddly familiar, like something I had always known would be waiting for me. The lawyer's office was empty when I arrived, and I could hear the soft hum of the overhead lights as I stepped inside. The woman behind the desk looked up when I entered, her glasses perched on the tip of her nose as she regarded me with a slightly confused expression. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. "I'm Ellie. I'm here about my grandmother's will," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need to know what she left for me, what the plan was." Her eyes flickered briefly, then she nodded. "I'll need to look up your file. Please take a seat." I sat down in the waiting area, my fingers drumming nervously on my knees as I waited. I could feel the tension building in my chest, each second that passed making the anticipation harder to bear. When she finally returned, she held a file in her hands, flipping through the papers with a practiced air. "It seems you've been named as the beneficiary of several assets, including the house," she said, her voice neutral. "However, there are stipulations. It's not as straightforward as you might think." I sat up straighter, the words grabbing my attention. "What do you mean? What stipulations?" She hesitated for a moment, clearly uncomfortable. "There's a condition tied to the house, Ms. Ellis. It was included in your grandmother's final wishes. You must meet certain expectations in order to retain ownership. If you fail to meet them, the property will revert to your mother's name." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words sinking in. "What kind of expectations?" The lawyer flipped through the pages, her eyes scanning the document as she read aloud. "You must maintain a close relationship with your family, especially your mother. If there is any estrangement or conflict that could jeopardize the family's unity, the house will be lost." I felt like the floor had just been ripped out from under me. "That's impossible," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of frustration and disbelief. "That's not fair. I don't even have a relationship with my mom anymore." The lawyer looked uncomfortable but didn't offer any reassurance. "I'm afraid that's the condition your grandmother set. I know it's difficult, but these were her wishes." I felt a wave of anger rising inside me. This wasn't just about a house. It was about control, about forcing me to live under their thumb, pretending to be part of a family that had never accepted me. "I'm not doing this," I said firmly, standing up. "I won't let them control me anymore." As I walked out of the office, I felt a new sense of clarity settling over me. It wasn't just about the house or the money. It was about my life, about taking back what had always been mine. And I would do whatever it took to make sure no one ever made me feel like I didn't belong again.